The world has changed and so have we. Welcome to the new look of CNN News 18. It's brighter, bolder, bigger, and it's the news reset that you need. On Vijayadashami, it's time to bring sense and clarity back to television news. Good morning, I'm Vandana Sebastian Bava. Let's make a start with some big breaking news coming in. Raksha Mantri Rajnath Singh in Sikkim today. He'll spend Dussehra with troops at the LAC, will perform Shastra Pooja as well. In fact, those are the details we have. Rajnath Singh to spend Vijayadashami today with troops at the LAC. Shastra Pooja will be performed as well. Remember, this is a hugely symbolic move coming during the standoff at the LAC. Rajnath Singh, Defence Minister, now to perform Shastra Pooja with troops at the LAC. Going across to Shreya Dhondiyal, who joins us for more details. Shreya, bring us up to speed with the latest.
Good morning to you, Vandana, and good morning to all our viewers. Rajnath Singh is on a two-day trip to Sikkim. Remember, Sikkim also shares a border with China. So he is on the ground to review operational preparedness, and a decision was taken that he will spend Dussehra with troops on the ground who are posted at the LAC. Part of the celebrations of Dussehra obviously is Shastra Puja as well. Hugely important in Indian tradition, hugely important in the Indian army as well, that depends on its shastras or weapons. So the Shastra Puja will be conducted at a forward post, we are being told, in Sikkim itself. And Rajnath Singh will be there to pep talk his troops, tell them about the situation that is brewing with China, where the talks are going, etc. Now, do remember that this is not the first high-profile Shastra Puja that we will see as far as the Defence Minister is concerned. If you remember, last year, he was in France, and the Shastra Puja was conducted on the Rafales. That had created some degree of controversy, but, you know, this is Indian tradition. It is Dussehra, and one of the traditions is to conduct this Shastra Puja. So last year it was in France for the Raksha Mantri with Rafales. This year it's going to be Shastra Puja in Sikkim with the troops who are posted at the LAC.
Right. Also, the Defence Minister Shreya has been making regular visits to the LAC. He's been interacting with troops regularly, giving them that much needed, pep talk and boost in morale.
That's correct. In fact, today, once the Shastra Puja is done, and it will happen at around 8:45 this morning, we're being told that there are projects that the BRO has undertaken. Those will be inaugurated as well. Now, a lot of what you've seen the Raksha Mantri do in the last 3 months is take a closer look at infrastructure projects at the LAC. Hugely important because we have an adversary whose advantage is infrastructure. I mean, there is nothing in the army. They said there's no more permanent investment than infrastructure, and we know that as far as the Chinese are concerned, they are heavily building infrastructure all across the line of actual control. So one of the things that the Raksha Mantri is going to do today is inaugurate BRO projects as well. And you are right, this is a time when the India-China conflict has entered its 6th month. It's well into its way into the 6th month. We know that Indian troops will be spending a very harsh, bitter winter at the LAC. And this has now become, the situation in Eastern Ladakh has now become the new normal. There is supposed to be an 8th Corps Commander level talk. It will possibly happen only next month now. But these Corps Commander level talks are going nowhere because China is insisting that India first withdraw from the strategic heights that it has occupied at the South Bank. What India is insisting is that the Chinese are the ones who ingressed, and therefore they are the ones who should withdraw first. So essentially there has been a stalemate. Yes, the External Affairs Minister is talking about a confidential deal that is being worked out, but the details are sketchy. For the moment, by the looks of it, the larger picture is that the talks are not going anywhere. The larger picture is this is a no war, no peace situation with China, and your troops need to be ready, and your troops need to be ready not just all across the LAC, they need to be ready all across the LOC, because we very well see a two-front war as well, which is why you are seeing the Raksha Mantri and the army chief regularly, and these are pictures and news items that have been coming to us regularly for the last 3 months. You're seeing them regularly at border areas, at forward troop positions, etc. because, your soldier needs to know what is going on. And when the Raksha Mantri of a country comes visiting, especially on a festival day like Dussehra, he could very well be with his family. Who doesn't like to spend a festival with their family? But the very fact that he's leaving his family behind in Delhi, traveling all the way to Sikkim to be with forward troops, that sends a message that we are with you, the country is with you as you stand firm against China.
It's not only for the troops and to boost their morale, Shreya, it's also important messaging to China.
It is important messaging to China as well, to tell China that the entire political leadership of this country is standing right behind its army. As I said, the corps commander level meetings are not going anywhere. The diplomatic level meetings are not going anywhere. China has been belligerent. Both sides have actually dug in their heels. And one of the reasons why the meetings are not going anywhere is because the Chinese have proposed that first we should, instead of disengaging, de-induct, which means we should take back our heavy guns, that is the artillery. We should take back our tanks, which is the armored core. Once we take out our tanks and our artillery from the equation, that is when the process of disengagement can start. Disengagement between troops who are eyeball to eyeball. Now, India has put its foot down, and they're saying absolutely not. The border infrastructure on the Chinese side is way better than the Indian side, which means if they need to mobilize their tanks and artillery, they can do it very quickly. But if we de-induct, then for us to induct back our artillery and our armored is going to be very difficult. So the talks are stuck. There is no two ways about it, which means that despite the fact that our troops are perched at heights of 16,000 feet, that is where they are going to be. And their biggest adversary right now, Vandana, is going to be the weather, not each other. We are already hearing of weather casualties coming from the Indian side and from the Chinese side as well. Now, this is something that everyone is seeing in the news. This is something that everyone is reading in the newspapers. And when I say everyone, I mean soldiers. When Raksha Mantri comes to the ground, tells you what is happening, gives you a realistic picture, you're assured that, you are at these heights with the entire country backing you, and not just backing you, praying for you as well on an important day like Dussehra.
All right, Shreya, thank you for joining us with those details on that story. Now, on the occasion of Vijayadashami, RSS Chief Mohan Bhagwat will address an event in Reshmi Bagh in Nagpur. For the first time, there will be no chief guest at the event due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. In his address, Mohan Bhagwat will speak of the challenges the nation is facing due to the virus. He will shed light on matters of social harmony and environmental protection. The address of the Sangh Chief, which happens every year on the occasion of Vijayadashami, will also present a vision for the organization for the coming year. We'll get you more details on this in just a bit, but the address by Mohan Bhagwat is expected to start shortly. Remember, this is the most important event of the year for the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, and we're expecting him to take the stage for about an hour, speak on various issues in Reshmi Bagh. Remember, strict COVID protocol will be followed. In fact, like I was mentioning earlier, there will be no chief guest this time around. The number of people present at that function is going to be strictly restricted as well. He's likely to warn the country about the challenges, facing the country and the rest of the world at this point. Well, going across to Sumit Pandey, who joins us live for more details. Sumit, what else are we expecting about this address?
Well, it's one of the major policy statements by the RSS chief, and it assumes significance every year that it is not only confined to, the socio-political life or the economy, the state of the economy of the country, but a gamut of other issues, policy issues, which is in a way addressed by the RSS chief, who is considered as the ideological font of the BJP. Now, since the BJP has been in power for the last 5 to 6 years, so any pronouncements here is also seen as a cue to various state governments and the central government now, as they are in power, to move forward on the issues which the RSS considers ideologically important to them. For instance, if you see that last 3 or 4 RSS chiefs address, Vijayadashami address, he raised the issue of national education policy. And the imprint of the RSS in the NEP, as it was drafted and redrafted and finalized, were very, very clear and apparent when the policy was finally made public earlier this year. Then the sort of legislative and statutory changes which one saw in the state of Jammu and Kashmir earlier, which is now a union territory, again were very clearly enunciated by the RSS chief in some of his addresses in the last 2 to 3 years, and we have seen those fundamental changes being brought about by the BJP government at the center, the division of the states, making it into a union territory, and various other amendment of the Article 370 and others. Now, this address, as it comes this time around, is in the midst of a global pandemic.
Right.
India is preparing itself to come out of it. The vaccine launch, how it's going to be administered, inoculation. Then, because of the pandemic, the sort of economic downturn that we have seen, the unemployment, and also politically, if one were to look at it, though RSS would never not admit it and would insist to call itself a socio-cultural organization, but any messaging, if they allude anything towards the ongoing Bihar electoral process, that could be interesting. If you remember, a couple of years back, last Lok Sabha elections, one statement by Mohan Bhagwat probably changed the course of the elections and which was picked up by Lalu Yadav and others, and they tried to portray as if the election, the policy of reservations might come to an end or might change because of the intervention of the RSS. At that point in time, JDU and RJD were together. But it has its resonance, it has its larger resonance, especially when the central government is being ruled by the BJP, and also there are many states where BJP government is in power.
All right, stay on with us, Sumit. We also have my colleague Maria Shakil joining us on the phone line as well. Maria, this time around the event at the RSS headquarters is taking place amidst the pandemic. So there's not going to be any chief guest. Even the guest list has been limited. A lot of changes on account of the fact that this time around is taking place amidst the coronavirus pandemic.
Yes, and that's the reason why social distancing norms and all protocols are being followed here. Why is this important? Why is this speech of Mohan Bhagwat so important as RSS Supremo? Because it gives a direction to the RSS cadres. And in the past, we have seen he has outlined some key challenges that the country is facing, and has also often listed the changes that India is witnessing as a society on economic front. And then he talks about how India can become what RSS has been often talking about, the glorious Bharat or a prosperous Bharat. We have seen, just before the 2019 polls or before the 2008 or 2015, as Sumit was pointing out, this particular speech was almost seen as a turning point in Bihar elections, because thereafter Lalu Yadav, who was out of jail then, converted into backward forward war in Bihar domain. Having said that, we have seen, that when Mohan Bhagwat essentially talked about that this result in 2019 elections has to be about what the previous governments before Prime Minister Narendra Modi had done. There was a degree of disenchantment. Prime Minister Modi was that beacon of hope. He had delivered on in the last 5 years. He was asking for another term to complete his work. So all that he had spoken about, he has given direction, and particularly this is important because that the last time was also coming after the abrogation of Article 370. So what Mohan Bhagwat talks about his vision for the country and how he sees the roadmap of it, what are the challenges, will he be giving some hint on Uniform Civil Code again, because will that be the next legislation that the government is planning to bring? That will also become important historically and also politically speaking.
Right. Being the ideological mentor of the BJP, Maria, this event is of course keenly watched by the BJP.
Yes, that's right. Voiced by the BJP, voiced by the BJP cadres, as much as it is voiced by the RSS leaders and its members, because we have seen how he talked about that when particularly about the injustices that was there because of Article 370. He had spoken in the context of how that has been one of the ideas that the RSS believed in, and then which was finally converted into a legislation, and the two union territories of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh were created. So, multiple crises have, and what are the possible political, socio-political solutions to that has been the core takeaway from this speech of Mohan Bhagwat. It has happened in the past, it will happen again today, because it is more to do with sociological changes. I mean, the socio-political changes that are taking place and its larger context in terms of the road ahead for the country at large. So this is of great importance and significance. And the day that is chosen is again very important, because Mr. Mohan Bhagwat addresses, this is an annual event, and we have seen in the past how it has set the agenda, the narrative for the RSS and also its political wing in the BJP. During Mr. Vajpayee's days, when L. Kedwani and Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee were the two faces of the BJP, this was of even more significance. But during Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Amit Shah's tenure, yes, of course, Mr. Shah is now the Home Minister, most of what the RSS has been believing in and has been standing up for has been achieved in terms of legislation, in terms of how the direction of the government's policies are. So even most of those wings of the RSS that are there, be it Swadeshi Jagran Manch, which talks about the economic policies and the directions, have taken shape in the current government already. So what next is something we'll be waiting and seeing for. And will he be making any sort of comment, particularly in the context of Battleground Bihar, because Bihar goes to polls starting 28.
Right.
And that is the reason why this speech of Mohan Bhagwat will be particularly being watched by the political opponents of the BJP in the state of Bihar.
All right, we'll be closely tracking that speech of the RSS chief. Thank you, Maria, for joining us. Thank you, Sumit, for joining us earlier as well. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Modi will address the nation via his Mann Ki Baat program on All India Radio at 11 a.m. this morning. This will be the 70th episode of the monthly radio program. In his last Mann Ki Baat address, Prime Minister Modi expressed concern over the slow pace of reforms at the United Nations, the global body's failure to tackle terror sponsors and present a united front to tackle the COVID-19 pandemic. He also spoke about the Shiromani Akali Dal breaking ties with the NDA and over farm bills, highlighting that the reforms are critical to boost farmers' income. Well, going back to Maria, do we have any indication about the issues that the Prime Minister will be touching upon this time around?
Yes, the Mann Ki Baat, this radio address, which is a monthly radio address, is largely on very social issues, in the sense that issues like the Prime Minister touches, which has to do with behavioral changes. It has to do with mindset, which is needed. In terms of, say, wearing a mask, he has emphasized on it again and again. He congratulates people and introduces them into public discourse who have played some roles in, say, water harvesting. That has happened as well. How people are playing role in water conservation. That happened. So what I'm trying to say is that this is an address which Prime Minister began when he came to power in 2014. So this was like a reviving of an old medium of communication, Vandana. And thereafter, he has used this platform to highlight how he gets those emails, those messages from people talking about their little successes and how Prime Minister continues to inspire them. And that is what is the big takeaway often from that. Post the abrogation of Article 370, he did talk about how this was the need of the hour, why his decision government took an unprecedented call. So he has used that also as a medium to reach out directly to the people of the country, because radio is still the medium of communication in several parts back of beyond of India, where people wait for this monthly radio address of Prime Minister Narendra Modi of Mann Ki Baat, in which he speaks to them directly, talks to them in terms of their success stories, highlights their success stories, as much as he gives direction in terms of the socio-political landscape of the country.
He'd also, last time around, Maria, invited suggestions from the people of the country for topics that he must talk about.
Yes, so that's how he works. I mean, that's how, and that is certainly the biggest highlight of Mann Ki Baat, that the Prime Minister himself asks what you want to hear about, what should we discuss next, what should we talk about. He even congratulates students when they do well in their 10th and the 12th examinations. So these are small things that he makes it very relatable. So, you know, for people to find a mention in Prime Minister's Mann Ki Baat is a huge deal. And that is the reason why, if anything, this Mann Ki Baat radio address has been a huge success. There have been 2 books also, Vandana, that have been written on it, just to highlight the outreach that happens through this address.
All right. Thank you, Maria, for joining us with the latest. The Prime Minister's Mann Ki Baat address expected at 11 a.m. this morning. On that note, a quick break. More news when we return. Stay tuned.